Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. What do New Yorkers think about immigration and immigrants? Is New York City a better place because of recent immigrants? Should current levels of immigration be increased, decreased, or stay the same? Do illegal immigrants take the jobs that Americans don't want, or do they take jobs sought by Americans? Should illegal immigrants brought to the United States as children gain legal status if they serve in the military or go to college? Should children born in the United States to illegal immigrants be automatically granted U.S. citizenship? Should the federal government issue ID cards to U.S. citizens and legal immigrants, which they are required to show when applying for jobs? The answers to those questions and others on Mayor Bloomberg, satisfaction with city services, quality of city life, living wage, paid sick leave, and much more are found in a new poll conducted by Baruch College Survey Research. To discuss the poll is Micheline Blum, the director of Baruch College Survey Research and distinguished lecturer at Baruch School of Public Affairs. She's one of America's foremost public opinion researchers, and she has just been elected president of the American Association of Public Opinion Research in New York. She is a longtime friend and colleague. Welcome, Mickey.
Thank you.
Give us some background on this poll. Exactly what did we ask, and for whom?
Well, this time we did this for us.
All right.
This is for the School of Public Affairs. This is our own poll, and we spoke to 1,200 New Yorkers by telephone, by landline, and cell phone across the city from April 26th to May 9th, and we conducted the poll in Spanish and in English. And we have lots of very interesting results.
Reams of data. Let's start with the questions that I raised in the lead. Is New York City a better place because of recent immigrants, according to New Yorkers in this poll?
Yes. Well, they're a little bit divided between whether it's a better place or really it's the same place.
But it's not a worse place.
But it's not a worse place. And in general, what we see across questions is that New Yorkers in general have a pretty positive view of immigrants, of immigration, and of the impact of immigrants on this city, even in recent years.
And this is both by the native-born as well, certainly as with immigrants.
Right. It's certainly both native-born and immigrants. Clearly, and not surprisingly, immigrants have an even better view of what immigrants bring to the city. But in general, we really see this, across demographic lines and even most ideological ones.
Okay.
There are some differences.
Go ahead. What have been the major differences that we've found across these questions, and certainly with this question?
Well, there are differences both demographically and ideologically. The people who are most favorable to immigrants and to the contribution of immigrants are those who are most educated, the young, those with the highest income, Manhattanites, Democrats, and obviously there's some overlap with all of those groups, and also people who in general themselves are most satisfied with the city itself.
So that colors their perception of its occupants.
Absolutely. It colors their perception of its occupants, and it colors their perception of the impact of immigrants.
Who are the outliers?
The outliers are mostly Republicans.
Okay.
That's the biggest group of outliers. Then there's also those, to a lesser extent, non-Hispanic whites are a little less enthusiastic than
either blacks
or Hispanics. And then again, those who are ideologically, or just those who are less satisfied, those who have just a different view of immigrants in general, tend to come out a little bit more negatively on all of the questions.
What about old folks?
Yes, older folks are a little
We're
less
getting
positive.
there. We're almost there.
Right. They're a little less positive. They're not really negative. They're more divided on a number of these questions, where younger people tend to be more enthusiastic and more pro-immigrant.
Okay, next question. Should current levels of immigration be increased, decreased, or stay the same?
Okay, here people thought they should either be the same or increased. Again, we don't see much enthusiasm for the idea of cutting back. The only group that wanted to cut back on immigration were Republicans.
Uh-oh. I think this may be a theme here.
It is.
Okay, moving from immigration generally to illegal immigration and attitudes toward that,
Yes.
we asked a series of questions. One was the jobs, the impact on employment. Do they take jobs, low-wage jobs, dirty jobs, you know, that other Americans don't take or other residents don't take? Or do they take jobs that Americans want and impact them?
Well, 2/3 of New Yorkers think that that illegal immigrants mostly are taking unwanted jobs, jobs Americans wouldn't take. So New Yorkers really don't see them have that same kind of negative impact. It's really very different from what we see in the border states.
Right. I mean, clearly, New York in many ways is, as we've looked at surveying across the country, is an outlier in immigrant attitudes.
It's also an outlier in its immigrant population, in that, first of all, so many people in New York either are immigrants or are the children of immigrants, or at most the grandchildren of immigrants.
Thank
We
you.
tend to be, as a city, so much closer to the immigrant generation. And the
immigration is now.
The immigration is now, and the immigration came from everywhere. It isn't just from one place. It isn't just
Like
a
Mexicans,
border.
for example, in
Exactly.
California or in Texas.
It's from all over, and it's also part of the whole history of New York, that melting pot and the contributions of all the different immigrant groups to this city, and what each one has brought. And you really did feel that, even anecdotally, as we listened into people being interviewed, that they really had that feeling that with each new wave of immigrants in each new country, something new and wonderful comes to the city.
Yeah, I mean, increase the gene pool. And greater diversity leads to a more vibrant population. Now, sticking with illegal immigrants, there is a great deal of controversy over several things. One is there's a move now to really change the Constitution. The Constitution provides that children born in the United States, irrespective of their parentage, automatically become U.S. citizens. Now, there is a move to change that and require that children born of illegal immigrants not automatically be citizens. What do New Yorkers think of this?
New Yorkers overwhelmingly favor keeping the law the way it is, keeping the
When you
Constitution
say
the way it is.
overwhelmingly, I mean,
it's really, in fact, we saw this across almost all lines. Again, the only outliers were Republicans, and even there, Republicans were divided on this issue. But they're the only group that was even divided. Every other group felt that that people born in this country, regardless of who their parents were, should be granted automatic
so the status
citizenship.
quo that's held for 223 years should remain.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act was proposed in the Democratic Congress, didn't get anywhere. More recently, I guess in the last 2 weeks, Harry Reid brought the act up again in the Senate, which would allow children of illegal immigrants, if they served in the military or went to college, to gain legal status. And it doesn't look like it's going to go far in the Congress, but what about New York?
But it would go really far in New York.
Okay.
Because 3/4 of New Yorkers tell us that they favor the DREAM Act, and here even Republicans do. And this is one that goes across all lines. Every group seems to believe that if people were brought here as children and then served in the military or went to college, that they should have that chance to become citizens. And this, as I said, this transcends all demographic lines and even ideological lines in the city. So if the DREAM Act were up to New York City, it would pass.
An overwhelming number.
Overwhelmingly.
And then the last of the questions that I led with, but even there are many more in the survey itself, should the federal government issue ID cards to U.S. citizens and legal immigrants, which they're required to show when they apply for a job?
Now this is interesting. This got a positive response from every
Everybody.
group, regardless of their ideological views, and was actually very similar. Even immigrants
Absolutely.
wanted
Rather
wanted to
substantial majority.
Absolutely wanted to see this. So it's interesting, however it's seen by civil libertarians and other people who are not happy about the idea of people having to have ID cards. I think people see it as a helpful solution.
In terms, one possible explanation that crossed our minds was that legal immigrants are disadvantaged by reputation
Exactly.
by illegal immigrants, and therefore they would be in favor as well.
Exactly. And so they see this as helpful to them. They don't see it as anti-immigrant. They really simply see it as a way so that they don't get harassed or thought of as illegal. They get to show that, no, I'm here.
One of the questions we asked New Yorkers whether they supported or opposed the law in Arizona, which gave local authorities the ability to demand immigration status or citizenship status. Where do New Yorkers stand on that? Where do they stand on the possibility of an Arizona-like law in New York?
Well, they disapprove of the Arizona law, but it's not as overwhelming as some of these other issues. It's a little closer, but there is still a majority disapproval of the Arizona law. There's a even stronger disapproval of the idea of bringing the Arizona law here. They're 6 in 10 don't want to bring the Arizona law here. And again, what we see, the same outliers. It's basically Republicans who see that as a
and basically the other socioeconomic, demographic, geographic, and other nativity groups all are opposed to it in either pluralities or majorities.
Yeah, and we see a little bit more division here again among those groups that are a little more divided on all the issues: the non-Hispanic whites, native-born Americans, older New Yorkers. They're a bit more divided on this issue. But again, New Yorkers, for the most part, don't like the idea of the Arizona.
And then one related question to the Arizona battery of questions was: should local law enforcement agencies have the power to enforce federal law, which is in fact what the Arizona law does?
Here, New Yorkers were much clearer. They were overwhelmingly on the side of reserving federal enforcement to federal officials, and they don't want to see the NYPD out there trying to enforce immigration law.
What about any outliers there?
This really, not really. This was something that that for the most part, nobody really seemed to want. Only very few, and no demographic group.
So, bottom line here, what's the story with New Yorkers and immigrants and immigration? Summarize, the report, if you will.
New Yorkers are immigrants, are children of immigrants, and they believe in the positive contribution of immigration and of immigrants to this city and to this country, and they are overwhelmingly positive about immigrants.
And you've done polling, you do polling in Texas,
Yes.
You've done it all across the country. Compare our findings with what you've seen outside.
Well, we are clearly more pro-immigrant in New York than substantially so on probably all of these questions. Now, I mean, some of these questions, even nationally, get more support than people would think. The DREAM Act and keeping the Constitution the way it is gets support even in across the country and in border states, despite what we might hear,
Right.
That's
why
on
we
television
take polls.
or in the Congress. there is support of that. But the whole idea of something like the Arizona law is much more popular in other states than it is.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at polling coming out of Georgia, in fact,
Right.
that suggested,
Yeah.
big majorities in favor.
Right.
Okay, now this poll not only dealt with the main topic of our conversation today, immigration, but dealt with a lot of other things as well.
Yes.
In fact, the survey research operation at Baruch came up with the first New York City SAT score. What is this SAT score?
Couldn't resist
I
calling
know
it
you
the
couldn't resist it.
SAT
What
score.
does SAT mean, and how did you develop it?
Okay. Well, this was an idea that there should be some sort of an index that would measure how New Yorkers feel about how the city is doing, how the city administration is doing. That's not just a jumble of questions, not just the mayor, not just city services, not just the trend, but that put it together and created an index that said, this is how New Yorkers currently feel about how the city is doing. The Ed Koch question, how am I doing? And this is meant to sort of answer that. And the SAT comes from, the S is from satisfaction, because it's a satisfaction with city services. The A is from approval, because we have a mayoral approval. And trend is really the direction of the city. And
So that's where SAT comes from.
And that's where the SAT came from.
Okay, now how, I mean, without, detailed mathematics, I know there's a lot of different ways we try to figure out how to present this. What does the SAT consist of, these three variables?
These are the three are the satisfaction with city services.
And New Yorkers?
And New Yorkers are very satisfied, about 2/3.
Highly satisfied.
65% satisfied with city services, which is very good news for the Bloomberg administration. Next piece is the mayoral approval, which is divided but slightly tilting positive at 46% positive approval, 41% disapproval.
So, and if this sort of trends with other polling out there in the past, the mayor is
Eking up.
slightly moving
Eking up.
He's not at 50,
He's not back to where he was once, but he's
moving up.
But he's moving in
This
the
is a
right
plus.
direction.
Okay, trend.
And then
direction, right direction, wrong track.
And this right direction, wrong track, we have a 42% right direction, 46% wrong track. But if you look at the whole country, you'll see that the country gets an even worse trend than that. And that often is reflective of the economy. And so, while again, it's slightly negative, to a great extent that is economic, and it's not as bad as what we're seeing nationwide.
Okay, now let's take those three numbers. So you've got a number for satisfaction, which is what?
65%.
And you've got approval, which is
46.
And you've got right direction.
Right direction, which is 42.
Okay,
and
so
we average them.
You average the three, and you get what?
You get 51%.
So if you draw a line, it's just above half.
It's just
now,
exactly.
in future polls, we're going to ask the same battery of questions, and instead of having 1 point, we may even have lines.
Yes.
We may have two
so
or
we'll
three
see whether
points.
it goes up or down. But interestingly enough, we're starting at just above the midpoint. So it's positive, but it isn't exactly enthusiastic.
But it ain't great. Okay.
Right.
In addition to that set of questions, we asked a whole bunch of questions on quality of life, contact with. Let's do that one. We asked the New Yorkers if they had contact with city government on an issue of concern for them, and were they satisfied with the response?
Not so satisfied. No, they did not. First of all, not. Of course, most New Yorkers had not had direct contact, but those who had were not as satisfied as they might have been with the city's
So there's room for improvement.
There's certainly room for improvement there. But you're clearly, when people have contact, it's because there's something wrong and they're complaining. So they're we're starting out with a
we're starting with a negative. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left. The portion of the survey that really surprised me the most were the questions on living wage, paid sick days, and state minimum wage. Talk to the results there.
Well, these were amazing because they were so overwhelming. New Yorkers are almost unanimous on paid sick days.
5 paid sick days.
5 paid sick days a year. New Yorkers, 89%.
So that's
said
virtually everybody.
Everybody should be guaranteed 5 paid sick days.
Including our friend the Republicans.
Right, everybody.
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 Everybody. Okay. Living wage, $10 an hour.
Plus
benefits.
Health benefits, 78%.
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
All groups.
All groups. Again, all groups. We found, this is, again, we're somewhat pro-immigrant. We're very pro-worker. And, you know, and people really believe in a living wage, in a decent minimum wage, in paid sick days, in those kinds of benefits for workers, for all workers.
What's the next thing that the survey unit does? What do you got on your plate?
Well, we're about to do some work with the New York City Department of Health on HIV and HIV testing, and we have a whole bunch of other projects sort of on the way that I won't talk about yet. We're doing something also on smoking.
Oh, okay.
This summer, so that's good.
Okay, so you're coming back when we do the next survey. I mean, come on,
Absolutely.
we can talk about our work.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joining me now, as he does regularly, is Mark Lieberman, a contributing editor here at CUNY TV. Mark's a former City Hall reporter for the New York Daily News and former senior economist for Fox Business Network. He also spent more than 20 years as a bank executive for top 10 banks in the country. Mark, you've seen and read the poll that Baruch College Survey Research conducted on living wage, paid sick days, and minimum wage hikes. Overwhelming majorities, 8 to 9 in 10 New Yorkers, favor all three of those. Surprised?
Not at all. Not at all with the results. What I am surprised at, though, is that elected officials don't pay attention to this. I mean, we've had a bill on living wage bottled up in the City Council. We've had a bill on paid sick days bottled up in the City Council. Essentially, Speaker Quinn is blocking this progressive legislation.
Now, why? I mean, in your mind, why?
Well, I can understand the arguments. I mean, she is an undeclared candidate for mayor. I mean, it's an open secret that she's interested in the job. She needs business support for that because she doesn't have the deep pockets that Mike Bloomberg had when he ran. Except she has to look at the people who will be voting. The owner of a business casts one vote. The people who will be affected by this legislation cast multiple votes.
Yeah, but there are policy reasons as well. There are conflicting studies that suggest, yes, living wage can, lead to fewer jobs. There are studies, primarily by the administration, that suggest that, but there are other studies, more studies that suggest that living wage legislation, rather than harming the residents and citizens of a city, in fact, help. Talk to those studies.
They would actually help. I mean, think about the multiplier effect. If you got a raise of $10 a week, you probably wouldn't even notice it. If you were making $200 a week and got a $10 raise, it changes your life. You're more likely to spend that money. Plus, think of the idea of a parent, the anxiety the parent goes through while a child is out sick, is homesick. How good a worker is that parent? Think about the idea of an individual coming to work with a cold or other form of communicable disease, and how many people that individual might affect and infect, in fact. I once took working for a bank, I worked for the president of the bank, and I took a rare sick day. It was legitimate. I mean, I had a really bad day, and he observed that I rarely took a day out sick, but then said, how many people did you infect when you came in? I don't think he was direct. I mean, I was a pretty clean guy, I think. I mean, so I don't think
you're not generally a disease carrier.
But his point was well taken, that we spread diseases, and there's a parallel here to what we heard during the congressional debate over Obamacare and the argument that said it shouldn't cover undocumented workers. Well, my response would be, I want to come back as an undocumented worker because obviously they don't get sick.
Right. But the studies themselves, what you've looked at, are there definitive answers out there? What does this suggest?
Well, it depends on what the project is and I don't know that anybody's going to stop working in New York City or stop doing business in New York City because they have to pay a little extra to a worker or provide 5 paid sick days. There's a company in North Carolina, SageWorks, that analyzes small business results. And what they have found is movement in measurements such as revenue per employee or profit per employee. And that's the way businesses make a decision. Is this next worker going to produce enough revenue, enough profit to justify my being able to hire him?
Okay, predictions. I mean, you know, economists are notably bad at predictions. Are we going to have living wage law in New York? Are we going to have paid sick day law in New York?
I think we are. I think because if I looked at the numbers correctly based on the council sponsors, there are enough council co-sponsors of the bill, of the sick days bill, to override a veto. It may be a little bit more difficult on living wage, but I think if one goes, the other will as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay. This will continue.
I hope so.
Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.